You're listening to the Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another episode. There we go. We help you pull the mic out in front of you. Welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. And so today we're going to talk about real estate, but how the art form of property management. Okay, because it's definitely an art. And so I have as guests today, Sue and Craig Richey of Richey Property Management, and a residential property management firm in Northern Virginia area, which is just outside of DC. Sue is the broker of the company, has been in the real estate industry since 1997, and Craig is the COO. They both started in real estate business, selling homes, and were successful realtors. When they started buying investment properties in the early 2000s, they knew they were hooked. And over the years, they have bought and sold many rental properties. In 2006, they started Richey Property Management. And as the market was heading for a downturn, the property management business began to grow as people weren't buying and selling, but they still needed a place to live. So they were renting. So since then, they have grown the property management business to currently managing about, listen to this, 700 single family homes. Okay. God bless you. So they are active investors as well and own 7 investment properties of their own. In the business, Sue is focused on sales and marketing, while Craig really manages many of the financial aspects and legal compliance for the business they built, and a great team over the years. And together they work hard to create the best experience possible for their clients. Both Sue and Craig are passionate about travel, probably people after my own heart, and have traveled all over the world. And they have 3 children, so do I, and have who are grown now. Mine's aren't. And their son is also works with them in the business. And I'm keeping fingers crossed for me for that, because that's what I'm trying to get one heir to the parent to the May Empire. But guys, welcome to the Practical Wealth Show. Good, glad to have you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
for having us.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
So we'll catch them up and let's show these people how to make these properties perform. So
Yeah. I think you get all the big points.
You did. I mean, I think you hit all the big points. I think one of the things that I know you talk a lot about on your show is other ways to create wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've probably talked about this before, but real estate is no different. I mean, this is a way to create generational wealth. And it's honestly something that we've shifted a lot of the focus of our business. We first started this. We started buying our properties. We started learning the ins and outs of management. Craig actually stopped selling real estate in 2010. We were rocking and rolling in the first part of the 2000s. The market was on its way up.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Washington, D.C. that it was hot. People were buying and we did really well. We were, top producers. We just decided we knew we were going to buy an investment property. And like I said, once we bought that first one, it was like, this is awesome. Like then they're paying your mortgage essentially, right?
Yeah.
So we started just doing the things to build this company, and we knew we wanted to do it differently, but we just didn't know how. Until more recently, we've really changed the kind of the shift of the way we want to approach our clients, and that is much more in a consultative, let's build wealth. We will do everything we can do to make your assets perform the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a financial advisor does it. It's about performing the asset, making it perform. But we knew that was what we were doing. We just didn't communicate that way. And I think that's something that's so important for people to really think about how to do it, because it's a little scary. People who aren't in our industry, for us, this is what we do all day long.
Right.
It's not that hard to buy a house. It's sometimes easier for me to buy a house than it is to pick out a paint color.
Okay.
But it's just because what we do, right? So anyway, I think that's a big thing we can talk about.
Right.
So why this?
And here's the other thing. What is the client? One of the things I'll ask people is how do you determine success, right? And your client is the landlord, the person that owns the property, and you're serving to them. So when we say perform, making sure that the rents are collected, the clients, the tenants are happy.
Yeah.
So define that. Break that down a little bit.
One real important thing to remember is that we really have 2 relationships. So you're right. The homeowner, the property owner is our client, but we also have a customer, and it's not really them. It's the tenant. We're selling a product that the owner has invested in, and our customer is that tenant, and we have to be good to both of them.
Yeah.
right? We have a little higher fiduciary responsibility to that client. But the reality is we need both of them. And we're just trying to always build a business that treats people fairly and keeps good tenants happy.
Yeah.
Because if you have a great tenant, keep them as long as you can. You know,
I wanted you to make that distinction because you're in the business, but I think that like if you're out here and you've got 6, 8, 9 properties, yes, you want to get your rent, you got to get good people, right? But you also need to make sure that you love on those people and keep good ones, get good ones in there and keep them. And
Yep.
so I like to dig out might not, it seems obvious, but I want to dig out the thought process that you have as you run the business.
Sue mentioned that we kind of have changed it recently. And it's funny because we did and we didn't. We have always looked at this as a long-term wealth build business. And we've also always kind of looked at our clients, the property owners, as people with a small business, and we are their business manager. I think that we've just kind of been more explicit and more direct lately in saying, our goal is for you to build wealth, right? So most property managers kind of have the functional mentality of let's do the tasks to make it easier on you or whatever, but it's a list of
Repair
tasks.
and maintenance,
Yeah, repair,
everybody.
maintenance, payouts, blah, blah, blah. And we have just more consciously changed that approach to say, we're not only doing those tasks, those are
Yeah.
the basics.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't do them as well. We think we do them very well. But bigger than that, we're always looking at where are we going with it? So where are you going with it? What time is it for you in your life? Do you want to keep accumulating or are you ready to sit on cash flow now? Right. And let's plan so that we can have you at the right place at the right time.
That's interesting. I don't know. I've never heard anybody talk about that. So talk about that process, how you begin to communicate that and help people get on track, and then how our listeners should be thinking about their assets, their
Right.
property assets. And I want to expand on that a little bit. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So let me touch on one thing you said about success, and then I'll answer that question. It's our goal is obviously, like Craig said, to show people how they can create wealth and make their life easier in the properties they have. But I think the first thing is understanding what their goals are. There are people who come to us who want to build a portfolio of 3, 4, 10 properties. Some people just, I'm going to be away for my work for a few years. I just want this house returned back to me in the best condition it can be in 3 years when I come back. That's their goal. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get them the most rent they can get. And that's across the board.
Mhm.
We're going to minimize their expenses, and all of those things we've systemized and improved over the years, but different people have different objectives. Some people are the investors. Some people are kind of accidental investors. They're not really, they don't care. So that's really important
Yeah.
to know. And I think when people are listening to this, I think you have to identify what is your goal. And it's funny enough, Craig and I were talking about this the other day, because yes, it's hard to believe, but we are 55, almost 55 this year. We're turning 55. I still feel like I'm in college, but we're not. Sometimes we act like it, but in any event, our son who works with us wants to also start investing in real estate too, because he's got that very much that mindset, very much a financial planner. And so our strategies are very different. I mean, we want to teach him, we want to mentor him, we want to help him, we will help him. But what we need to get out of it in the next 5 to 10 years is a little more cash than he needs, right? And when we've invested 20 years ago, it was just buy and hold. And we sold some when the time was right. And we flipped some and we renovated and all that stuff. But
Mhm.
it's different. So people really need to think about what they need and how can real estate become a part of your portfolio. What you would.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So now finish the other thought, or is that, that you,
That was,
or is that
I
another
just
thought?
ended
Oh, that was
it.
it, just version.
That's what I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. I think that you're saying into that mindset, she did hit upon it, but I think that the conversation with clients it always starts or involves in the first conversation or two, the fact that they are a business owner. Because a lot of people, like Sue said, don't come into it thinking that way. And they may be in this business temporarily, but we've seen it over and over through the years. People say, I'm going away for a few years. And next thing they're gone for 12 years. We're about to sell one client's house who was going away for 2 years. And that was probably 12 years ago. And so it's time, he's had a transition in his career. It's time to sell the house. Great. But what happens with other people is that they see, hey, look, somebody's paying my mortgage. I'm building equity. I'm building my investment value without a lot of effort on their part because we're managing their business for them. And so then they see that, okay, if I bought another one, invest a little more money in another one, I can have two growing with somebody else paying that growth, right? Plus the market is increasing. So you start to get that understanding of this as a mindset. So in the long-term picture, if you can do the buy and hold, you get to the point where the mortgage is paid off and the cash comes in, and you have to set aside some cash for management fees, for repair and maintenance, for taxes, for insurance. There's some expenses to the business, but you get a cash flow coming in and you have an asset that continues to appreciate while that cash is coming in. And so part of that investor kind of mindset is, what do I need and when do I need it? Not only in terms of when can I afford to invest the cash, but also when do I want the cash coming back out of it? And what type of investment do I want? So in some markets, you're going to look and you can see that if I buy this house, I can get $100 a month of cash flow right away, maybe $200-$300 a month of cash flow right away. That's great. That doesn't always mean that's the best place to invest, because places with that cash flow often have lower rates of growth. So your asset appreciation isn't as big. If you're in the other situation where you can afford to invest in a market with a little higher price, usually a little higher prices, where you might be upside down on your cash flow for several years, you probably get higher asset appreciation. So we still own our first investment property, and it went from about $250 a month negative to where it's now giving us about $500 a month, which is great. The point is that during that time, it's almost tripled in value. Over 2.5 times probably is roughly where it is. So that is a real value. I mean, at some point, we're either going to sell and take cash out or sell and buy one or two other houses, right? I mean, we could do an exchange, tax-free exchange, and reinvest that money and then have two sources of cash flow that are still building asset value. And so there is a time to really consider where you are in that stage and what you want to do. And there's always a plan A and a plan B. So our plan A is never sell anything unless you're trading to reinvest.
Right.
And there are tax reasons for that. But unless you're selling to reinvest, never sell the asset. Just live off of the cash flow coming from it.
Right.
And that's what we hope to do.
What is Kiyosaki? Milk the cow, don't slaughter it. Do you want to be a rancher or a dairy farmer?
Right. You want to have one big feast, or do you want to have milk forever? Right.
Right. Exactly.
So
here's the question. So should people, let's talk about from a tactical standpoint, what are some of the mistakes that people that are managing their own stuff just in general make, and what should they try to manage their own stuff, and when is it time to give it to a professional? I know I just gave you 3 questions, but let's start with, what are some of the common mistakes you see people make when they're they say they're accidental landlord and now they've got 5 or 6, 7 properties. It's not an accident. So you got to make money, but now you got to make, but it's a work. It's not passive income. I want all these houses. Hey, passive. Okay.
I think we can both answer that question. I will start out by saying that people need to ask themselves, do you have time? That's the biggest single question, because time will dictate how much you can learn, how much you have time to go make repairs. Do you have time to develop the right network of people? I mean, all of those things take time. And if you want a life, I mean, if you want to travel and you want to be away and not have that, then you got to ask yourself, what's your time worth? That would be the first question.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think what we do is a service business, right? The fact is, you can manage your own time is clearly one of the biggest factors, and knowledge is a big factor, but with the right time, you can learn. But the reality of it is, when we're doing a lot of properties, we become very efficient.
Yeah.
And so we can do things that the average individual can't do in the same amount of time. I mean, literally what would take somebody 3 or 4 hours, and like an emergency call, okay, the disaster remediation company needs $1,500 upfront before they're going to get in the truck at 2 a.m. We call them up and they just go, because they know us and we have relationships, and we call them unfortunately a little more regularly, but a few times a year we're calling these guys, they know us. So we can solve a problem in 20 minutes that would take that owner 4 hours.
Right.
Right. Because we have that in place already. And that's just one example of it. There's also the legal knowledge because the laws are changing in every jurisdiction. We're keeping on top of it. We're knowing what we need to do to comply with all the requirements for fair housing and for taxation or for licensing or for whatever it is. We're on top of that because it is our business. If this is your sideline, it's a little harder to be on top of that. So your time investment has to be a lot greater. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is quite how much time they're putting into it or how much they're not doing. They don't even know they're not doing.
People discount their labor and like people that when they buy them, they can do the work. And I said, dude, if you look at hours you put in and your ROI, you're basically working for minimum wage. So being able to do work is, see, for me, it's like I'm unhandy. So it doesn't even occur to me to do anything. Okay. I don't even like painting. And so y'all are both strategic coach, right? So my favorite book of last year was Who Not How.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great book.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's a theme that I really want to emphasize a lot more in our business. Cause even sometimes people we manage for, they want to get involved and go, they think they know what we should be doing or who we should be using.
Right.
Like just back off and like not, and just let us do what we do. That's why you hired us. But I want to go back to your question about the mistakes. There are a number of things, but I'll highlight a few things I think are probably the biggest mistake of people who kind of do this on their own. First thing is really doing poor tenant screening or no screening.
Come on now.
The marketing of the property is a whole other thing. Yes, there's a process and a system to that, to being smart about pricing and all of those things. But somebody who's got a property, they're trying to get a tenant in, maybe they're not getting somebody in fast enough. All of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I got to pay the mortgage. I need to get someone. So they start to get that desperation and they're like, okay, you breathe, you can write a check. Okay, I'm going to take you. And they don't do all of the things that are so important, doing the credit check, criminal background, past tenancy, employment verifications, on all of this comprehensive look at a person, because each of those tells you a little bit about different things that are collectively going to tell you, is this good person going to pay? Are they going to take care of it? And what that means is choosing the right tenant makes the difference in this whole tenancy. It sets up that whole tone for like, you're going to have problem after problem after problem, or this is going to be a great experience. And I think not doing proper tenant screening up front and turning away the people that are not qualified, you're doing yourself a big disservice by not doing that properly. And I think a lot of people don't know what to do. So that's we have a YouTube channel. That's a lot of the education we've kind of put out there, and we get a lot of good questions from people about, oh, well, this or this situation happened or whatever. But I think that's one big mistake I see people do, because that's why then they have to evict. And that's when some of these people come to us because they're like, I can't do this again.
A bad tenant is far more expensive than no tenant.
Yeah, you can't be broke. One of the things is that I'll see people and they're desperate because like one of the principles we teach is liquidity, right? You need to have 6 to 12 months of liquidity because you need to be patient and get the right person in there and not just give somebody that can give you 2 months or first and last because you can come up with that with a tax return and that's the last money you'll ever get. And my wife's an attorney. So now you got to hire my wife if you're in the Philly area, right? To get these people. Or you're paying for somebody to live in your house. And who are the worst? How do you feel about renting to family?
To who?
Family.
Like our own family, I mean?
Your own family. Yeah.
Oh, to it. Okay. Somebody you're related to.
Related to.
Okay. First, I thought you were asking a fair housing question, which I know I can't. I was going to warn you about that. People ask us those things all the time. But no, do your own family. I mean, honestly, our kids are great. I'd rent to them anytime, right? But in general, you better be prepared for their problem to become your problem. And we tell our clients that, right? If your family member is renting your house and loses their job and goes through a hard time, you're not going to kick them out. And therefore you are subsidizing their life.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Part of what we do, part of our job is to be that middleman, to take the emotion as a landlord out of the equation. Because we are not going to get emotionally involved. If it's a family member, there's no way you can't become emotionally involved. And if you do rent to a family member, okay, you do that. You better just do all the same things you would do. Have a lease, have a deposit, have all the things that you would have no matter who it was.
Right.
because that's super important.
Yeah.
But I think that's
Still know that
just
you
adds a
could have,
layer of
Right.
complexity
I've
to it.
seen nightmares of
Yep.
just, and don't let you inherit the house. And if they feel like, well, no, this is the family house, so we don't have to pay you. I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
so don't do it.
Right.
Yeah, no, it can be a challenge. I think that one of the other things that people do or don't do as a self-managed landlord, and even some property managers, I'll tell you, but is not doing proper and frequent enough in property inspections.
Mm.
We've had people come to us and they go, "Oh my gosh, this tenant destroyed my property. I never went and looked at it because the rent kept coming in. They paid. I mean, they're going to be running a crack house in there, but they just the rent kept coming in.
Right.
Like it probably was because they were
Right.
making lots of money, but
Right.
they never looked at it. And some come and the property is basically trash, but the rent still comes in. So doing them at least once in that 1 year cycle, doing a super thorough move in and move out inspection helps eliminate or reduce the conflict at the end of a lease term saying, hey, you caused this damage, and you can charge people for things that are beyond normal wear and tear. That's actual damage. And that's, a whole other conversation about the details of that, but you have evidence, or not doing that well enough is a big problem.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And when things do go to court, judges don't like to hear that something sat that way for 8 years. We had to have a client who, when we took over management, he hadn't been inside his property for 8 years. And so if there had been a big problem in a dispute with their move out and their charges, and the judge said, when were you there last? And he said, well, 8 years ago. The judge was like, well, you don't know what was going on, and I'm going to call that wear and tear. And all of a sudden there's a bill that if you had addressed it somewhere during those 8 years,
Right.
wouldn't have been your bill.
Right. Yeah. I would boil this down to buy it right and build management fees into your make sure that your net operating income will allow for the management fees. Cause you know,
Yeah. Right.
it's
And,
a hard form in my mind. You need to just have somebody else do it and
Well,
keep it moving.
Yeah, there are big benefits to it. And one of the biggest really is that there's a liability factor that people don't consider. I mean, the time is a huge factor, but there's also liability of what could go wrong. And what have you making sure that we can do everything we can to reduce those risks.
Talk
And
about
most
that. So,
individuals don't.
a strategy that we teach is maximum protection, right? And a second principle of our process. And what could go wrong? Properly
Yeah.
insured. Have you transferred risks
Correct.
using insurance, using entities, using trust? And so, what is this kind of stuff that you've seen go wrong that a lot of people are unprepared for?
Yeah. Well, I have to say this. I mean, I just did a video about this subject yesterday for internal use about landlord, kind of homeowner or rental property insurance. And the good thing is that the worst things we've seen happen didn't happen to us, which is very nice. And we want to keep it that way. Right? So I'll give you a kind of a worst case scenario from another property manager we've known for a lot of years. And this probably happened 6 or 8 years ago, but they had an investor who bought a house. He never lived in the house. It was pure investment. He hands it over to the property management company to lease it. They lease it out. They find a tenant. The tenant moves in. The tenant decides after moving in, he wants to put his boxes in the attic, which in a good lease, you can't touch the attic. And here's why. The tenant's a little too big to get up the ladder into the attic, so he sends his 10-year-old son. 10-year-old son goes up there, doesn't know where to step and where not to step, puts his leg through the drywall on the ceiling, and as he's doing that, grabs onto something to try and catch himself. Well, what he grabbed onto was an old concrete wash tub sink. I don't know why anybody had ever put it up there, but the poor kid fell through the ceiling and pulled the wash tub on top of him, crushed his legs, not repairable. I mean, the kid's damaged for life. This is a life-altering injury. The tenant then turned around and sued the homeowner and the property manager, neither one of which had been in the attic, had ever lived in the house, knew there was a wash tub up there. And by the way, the lease said don't go up there, right? So the fact is they have no basis and no grounds for the lawsuit, but they can sue, right? And you have to defend yourself. And so what what people don't think about is just what you said. What could go wrong and how can you protect yourself? So with the right insurance, you call your insurance company, they hire the lawyer, they defend that thing.
Right.
Right. And it's horrible and sad for the kid. But the reality is that's not your fault. Right. It's not your burden to take care of that kid for the rest of his life.
He told you not to go up there. Right. It's horrible is, but people aren't prepared. And they think, and all the TV commercials say, well, somebody's got to pay. So it can't be you're clumsy, right? You fall, you hurt yourself. Well, somebody's fault, not yours.
Right.
And so I call it playing defense. You have to play defense.
Yep.
You 100% do. I think just along those same lines, and this is also a common thing people do. They want to leave some of their things behind, right? They want to lock a door. They want to leave some things in the corner of a basement. Nobody touched this, okay? There's a couple problems with that. One, we can't control whether a tenant, we or that owner can't control whether a tenant's going to touch this stuff or not. Okay. So we tell people we don't like anybody leaving anything anywhere.
Right.
But if they absolutely insist on something, just depends. Just like assume that it's going to be destroyed. Like if you're okay with it not coming back to you, then
Right.
okay.
Right.
Yep.
The other problem with it goes back to the liability problem. So if you leave a lawnmower and you say, oh, I'm doing a nice thing, I'm going to leave a lawnmower for this tenant to mow a lawn, and they don't, but something happens with this lawnmower, that can come back to you because this isn't insured. This is personal property. There are things like that can cause big liability issues that nobody's thinking about. And
Right.
so leaving things behind for tenants to use, not a great idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
It does put a liability on.
I never even thought about that. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And on top of that, people assume that if they leave their prized china cabinet in the basement, it'll be insured by their homeowner's insurance. Well, they don't really have homeowner's insurance anymore. They have rental property insurance.
Mm.
It doesn't cover personal property belongings. So if that basement floods and that thing's ruined, that's your loss. So people really need to properly take care of those things. And the best way is just put it in storage somewhere.
Mhm.
And it's covered by your insurance for the storage place.
Yeah, when we look at management, and again, this is kind of what a homeowner or investor or somebody should be thinking about. If we look at it in 3 buckets, we call them our 3 pillars of protection. It's really about the property itself. That's
Mhm.
pretty obvious, right? Taking care of and doing all the things to maintain that property. The finances are our second pillar,
Right.
maximizing income, minimizing expenses, etc. And then the third is the liability component, which is the one that's, like we said, we've been talking about, is probably the most neglected for lack of knowledge about it and realizing what can go wrong. And so and especially, I mean, we've been in this business for 20 plus years. The landlord tenant arena is the most litigious area in real estate, hands down. Like this
Wow.
is everything from fair housing to, it's probably the biggest, the fair housing complaints within tenant landlord is huge. And so
Big in
there
there.
are a lot of things that can go wrong, a lot of problems. All of that said, it's still a great idea to own rental property. You just need to do it the right way. You need to be smart about it. People manage their own money, right? But could you still pay somebody smart who's a financial advisor and make more money? Yeah, probably. I mean,
Right.
it's like anything else.
Mhm.
So-
Mhm.
And I want to touch on something Sue said there too about the fair housing stuff. Another big mistake that people do when they are screening people is digging in too much on the personal.
Mm.
They may be skipping the credit or the employment checks, but they're like, well, I drove by their house. Looks like they keep it okay where they're living now. I met them. They're a nice family. And people will ask us, people who've been self-managing for years will say, are you going to meet the applicants? Am I going to get their names and get a chance to talk to them? And the answer is always absolutely not. Right? Because as soon as you do that, you are opening yourself up to a fair housing complaint if you decline them for any reason.
Wow.
And discrimination is not held to the same high standard of proof. If it looks like discrimination, it is, right? And if if the property owner does it or the property manager does it, it doesn't matter. We're all tied together and we're both responsible for it. So we have very clear processes where we keep during that process. They're going to make their decision without any of it.
Okay.
Right.
And so that's really a protective thing. So the idea of a homeowner meeting an applicant or getting their names or knowing whether it's a family or whatever else it is, all of that needs to be separated.
Wow, that's major.
Yeah.
That is the
That's why
biggest.
that's huge.
It is.
And those are very frequent complaints, right?
It does. It comes up a lot. People ask us things we can't answer. They get mad at us. And we've gotten rid of many clients who, okay, there is a reason we're doing this to protect you and us, and it doesn't work. And it's not going to work. That client is not worth it to us. When we're obviously, as we grow our company, we're looking for new people, but this has got to be a good match both ways.
Mhm.
Right.
And there's no way we're going to risk the ethical side of it first and foremost, and then obviously the business as well by just doing things that we know are just plain wrong.
Wow, that's great. That is such a great
But
point.
the bigger thing is like people don't even know that it's wrong.
Right.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So that's probably the bigger
I
problem.
always tell people the law is not logical, it's legal, right? So that's why you need a lawyer, right? You need insurance
Right.
companies, lawyers. Let me go back to the point. I want to make sure because I missed the point. The three pillars are
Yeah.
what's pillar number one?
The property.
Property. Okay.
Right.
Property, finances, and liability.
Right.
Okay.
So it's care and maintenance of the property, watching every penny in and out. And we are not penny wise and pound foolish with that. We do everything with the longer term perspective of it. So if you try to cheap out on some repairs, it's going to come around to you. Do it right, get it done, and don't do it again for a while. Right?
Right.
Don't do it cheaply 5 times. So, and by doing good repairs in a timely manner, you also keep good tenants happy.
Right.
And that saves you turnover, and turnover costs money.
Because they've
Right.
been to bad places where they don't fix anything. So if you take care of them, they do not want to leave because they have
Right.
good contrast of I got a cousin, they might have 40 or 50 units. They own a construction company. So when something goes wrong, it's like boom, that day somebody's out to fix it and they have a waiting list because everybody's like, no,
Yeah.
no, we're
Yeah.
staying with you because
Yeah.
everything works, and if it's wrong, you get it fixed, and you just kind of want to have that reputation in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How did you
And you're
see-
treating them like human beings.
Yeah.
They deserve to have a place with, a bathroom that functions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be
exactly.
a constant problem.
What do you see? So as you look forward with the market and your businesses, what are you guys excited about, and what should our listeners be excited about going forward? Let's say over the next 2-3 years.
So I think there's going to be some more opportunities to buy real estate. Like I said, we for a number of years in the 2000s we were buying rental properties. Then when our business really started to grow, we started to invest really our time and money into that. And we just didn't have the bandwidth to go looking for other properties. While there were opportunities, it wasn't the right time for us. It's now that time again. Business has grown. We're going to continue to grow it, but we have a good team. For us personally, we're going to be out there looking for deals, not just in the Washington area, because Washington, there may be something that pops up here, and we will certainly be
Yeah.
aware, but in other parts of the country, because we are comfortable looking in other places, because we
Yeah.
know what a property manager there should be doing. We're familiar with the process.
Right.
I think for other people who have been contemplating this, there's going to be some opportunities. I mean, there were, I don't know, the market with a lot of what's happened with COVID. I mean, there's been some shakiness. I think some of that's going to play out when, I don't know, there is probably a bubble, not like that we had in 2008, but there's
Yeah.
just a bit. The market will correct and adjust a bit.
Right.
Mhm.
There's a bit of enthusiasm that's a little overdone. Some of the prices will soften. Interest rates are ticking up, so that'll probably soften prices a little bit more. And if you're looking for the right thing at the right time, I think that there will be some opportunities coming. And we have people investing in the DC market because they know it's an appreciating asset. The market's going to stay strong. And in the 08, 09 recession, the close-in areas around DC were very stable and solid. The further out you got, the more variable they were.
Mhm.
The other parts of the country were hit hard. So there is a security to here, but there's also advantages in other places too. So it's a constant evaluation and trade of of what's going on. If you look at some of the Sun Belt areas, they've had tremendous price increase in the past 12 to 18 months,
Mhm.
both in sales and rentals. Some of those still have room to grow. Some may be tapped out. The point is that there's always a phase and a growth to it. And like Sue said, we were not acquiring for a while, and I wish we were, but timing changes. Our kids are out of college now. It's a little easier, right? But the good news is, and this kind of goes back to that plan A, plan B, the first property we bought, we said, all right, to our oldest, we said, this is for your college. When you go to school, we'll sell it. We didn't. We still have cash flow coming off of it, which is a nice thing, right? If you could make a different plan work and you can hold on to that asset, it's wealth for generations, right?
And so as you started, just about, I think you have to begin with the end in mind.
Exactly.
Your generational wealth, cash flow. We call it in our system. We call it getting to a position of FU.
Yeah.
That's a nice
I
cash to
like
be.
Right. Where you got passive income. We say passive income twice your expenses, right? So that way, if somebody doesn't pay, somehow the government makes it legal for them not to pay you. You still are over and above. You got liquidity, and you still have enough money to cover your rents and still be able to save money and do what you have to do. So that's the FU position. So that's the overriding.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like that too. And that gives you the ability to go through those adversity times. I mean, COVID for a lot of landlords and a lot of tenants, especially, really wasn't a time of adversity, right? A lot of people are like, oh, hey, great, I get to work from home. I get the same pay and I work in my pajamas. But a lot of people had no work. And I mean, it was horrible for a lot of people. And we've actually got a client who owns a lot of properties that are in that kind of economy. So a lot of tenants were unable to pay. And to their benefit, they didn't go evicting people. They didn't kick them out. But what they also didn't do was really go after other sources of income. And since we've taken over those properties, we've collected a lot of money, big back rent for them from subsidy programs. And really, that is a win-win-win. I mean, it's a win for the tenant because this debt is off of their shoulders.
Right.
It's a win for the owner because they got the cash. And it's a win for us because we get to manage that and we build loyalty. It was a lot of work on our part, but it really is something that an individual owner probably doesn't have the time and resources to dig into.
Yeah.
We knew that if we dig into it, we can get a lot of money for the client and a piece of that for us.
Right.
What's not
that's a win-win-win situation.
I think that's probably one of our biggest success stories. So you think somebody with a huge portfolio like they had and have was more knowledgeable, but it just goes to show everyone and on us that, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have hundreds of properties or one. You got to take the time to do the things that need to be done, or you're not making that work for you the best it can.
Right.
That's
Everybody
what
has a blind spot and sometimes like the detail work of that is not sexy. And that's the calls, all this stuff to figure out the paperwork of how to get the money and waiting on hold and all that bureaucracy, which drives me crazy. So I would have to hire that out. Cause I even like the EDIL stuff, I just had zero patience for that stuff. And so fortunately, my business didn't suffer. So I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
It just it can become overwhelming. And that's not why you buy these properties.
Yeah.
You don't do that for that reason. So I think, and for your listener, like if we have been very involved with our national association, we have a ton of relationships with good people at property managers, realtors all over the country. I mean, if anybody who listens to this is interested in doing something in a certain area and you don't know where to start, we are happy to be a resource, connect people with people, because that's what we love to do. And I mean, and that's what it's all about. You're building the community of people to help each other and kind of just find those opportunities. Cause that's sometimes if it's not in your backyard, you don't know what to do. You need the people who can help you. So that's somewhere we.
So tell them. So that's what I was going to. So tell them they want to follow you. I know you have a YouTube. Well, I don't know. It's for clients only, but how?
No, it's public.
Is it
no.
okay?
Yeah,
so tell them how to follow you and or if they're within an area that you manage, if they want to reach out to you to talk to them about taking over their stuff. What's the best way to get in contact with you?
I mean, we are in Northern Virginia. Our office is in Reston. So we manage properties just in Virginia and really just about 30 miles out of Washington, D.C. Okay, on that radius. Our YouTube channel is probably where you can get the most information if you're kind of thinking about just learning about issues. That's kind of how I started making about what are people asking us all the time. It's Richey Property Management, Richey. You can probably put that in your
The show
notes.
notes. Mhm.
And that's YouTube, and we're on other social, but that's where really you're going to find the most information that'll help you. But if you are local, by all means, we're happy to talk with you, advise you. We're low pressure salespeople. We want to be able to take that burden off of the day-to-day burden so that
Right.
people can use the time they have now to do more high productive activities like find another property or just read a book. I mean, it doesn't matter. Whatever is important.
Right.
That's I saw this and I saw this. I have to actually start a video with this. I saw this and I don't know which player it was on somebody's arm tattooed on the NCAA. He was in the Final Four. I don't remember which team it was. It said, time is the only currency that you, what does it say, Greg? Time is the only currency that you cannot
Only spend once.
and only spend once. I was like, I love it. This is like,
When they
I
got
gotta
some,
put that
loved
somewhere
it.
and use it somewhere because I mean, no matter whether it's real estate or anything else, that's I don't know. That's kind of what we try to live by because you got to do what makes you happy and you got to life has to be fun. So I love that quote.
I love that too. For especially to people or this trendy thing that's a tattoo's a permanent thing. So at least you got a good motto.
It's great. It will still be true 50
Right.
years
Still be
from now.
truthful. I love Susie. Might be growing in 6 months. I've broken up. Okay. But listen, guys, the moral of this story is I think you shouldn't be managing your own property.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Is what I got out of this. Confirmed for me that I'm incredibly lazy and who not how.
Yeah.
Who, not how.
I would go back to one of the things you said with the sales thing also. Y'all are a strategic coach is what Dan Sullivan says, sales is helping people make a future decision that's good for them.
Mhm.
That's
And
good.
so working with the property manager or working with you guys in the area is not a sales pitch. It's like, okay, let me just educate you and help you
Yeah.
make a future decision that's good for you. So it's not sales
Yeah.
because you're
You know,
creating value to the marketplace. But yeah.
if we like pressure somebody into signing on for management, it's not going to run well. I mean, they're going to be nitpicking everything we do. And in the end, they're going to cancel and do it themselves because they always wanted to do it themselves.
Right.
And we pressured them into doing it. So
Right.
we basically try to educate and inform and let people make the decision. And most of the time, the right decision is we should do it. Now, if you live next door and you're really handy, okay, go do it yourself. Right.
Right.
We'll still do it better, easier, faster, blah, blah, blah. But if you want to do it, go do it yourself. That's fine.
That sounds good. All right,
Yeah.
guys. Anything I should have asked you that I didn't? I think we I always that's my catch-all to make sure I forget anything.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm sure there's other thing. That's the thing. Like you never know everything that you
Right.
So you know what? When there's questions, that's why I said you can
Reach out. We can always do this again. And I'm
talk
sure
about some
there
other specific topic. That's
Yeah.
awesome. But we've been doing this a long time and we don't know everything, but we know a lot. So
yeah,
we can
absolutely.
We're always learning new. If you're not learning,
Yeah.
you're not growing, and we're always trying to grow.
Absolutely. So guys, I think we said it all, and I appreciate you being generous with your time and giving us a lot of insights. I'll tell you, guys, if you need to go back and if you have some properties and you want to grow, there is a lot of tactical stuff they gave you in terms of thinking about that will save you lots of time, money, lawsuits that you need to kind of go back and kind of check. We'll try to do it in the show notes, but it's some really good stuff that they share. So Sue and Craig, thanks again for being on the Practical Wealth Show.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Yeah.
Always love to talk about this.
Yeah, me too. And so we'll put, guys, just make sure you listen, share this with your friends that are in the real estate business. I think everybody will learn a lot. And leave us a review if you like the show. If you don't like, put somebody else's name on there, right? No, but do bad review somebody else, not for me. And so go out there, make it a prosperous day. And everybody, thanks for listening to the Practical Wealth Show. And we will talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission